What if the breakthrough you've been praying for is closer than you think? For months, maybe even years, you've been carrying the weight of financial pressure, unanswered prayers, and the feeling that your life has been standing still. You've worked hard. You've stayed faithful. You've kept going even when nothing seemed to improve. And yet, there were nights when you wondered if anything would ever change, if the struggle would ever end, if your prayers were truly being heard. But tonight, God wants you to hear something that could change the way you see this season. This is not the end of your story. This is not where your journey stops. The delay is not your destination. The setback is not your future. Because even now, while you cannot see it, God is aligning things behind the scenes. Doors are being prepared. Opportunities are moving closer. And the breakthrough you've almost stopped expecting may be beginning tonight. Maybe you're tired of pretending everything is okay. Tired of telling people you're fine, when deep down you're carrying worries that never seem to leave your mind. You wake up thinking about bills. You go to sleep thinking about bills. You calculate numbers over and over, hoping somehow they will add up differently. You tell yourself not to worry, but the pressure follows you everywhere. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard you work, you can never get ahead. Every step forward seems to be followed by another setback, another unexpected expense, another delay, another disappointment. And after a while, it's not just your finances that feel stuck. It's your spirit, it's your motivation, it's your hope. You start questioning things you never used to question. You wonder if you're falling behind. You wonder if everyone else knows something you don't. You wonder why life seems to move so easily for some people while you're struggling just to stay afloat. The hardest part isn't always the lack. Sometimes it's the waiting for good news, the waiting for an opportunity, the waiting for a sign that things are finally changing. You check your phone hoping for a message. You open your email hoping for an answer. You pray one more prayer and hope this time something will be different. But many days end exactly the way they began. Quiet, ordinary, unchanged. And that can be exhausting. Especially when you've been strong for so long. Especially when you've carried responsibilities nobody else fully understands. Especially when you've been fighting battles that remain invisible to everyone around you. There have been moments when you felt completely alone in it. Moments when you sat in your car a little longer before going inside. Moments when you stared at the ceiling late at night, wondering how much longer you could keep carrying this weight. Moments when fear tried to convince you that this was simply how life would always be. But God sees every one of those moments. He sees the tears you never showed anyone. He sees the prayers you whispered when nobody was listening. He sees the courage it took to keep moving forward when everything inside you wanted to quit. And here's what you've been missing. Just because this season has felt stagnant doesn't mean your story is stagnant. Just because progress has been invisible doesn't mean progress has been absent. Sometimes the seasons that feel the slowest become the very seasons that prepare us for the greatest breakthroughs. And what feels like endless waiting today may soon make sense in ways you never expected. And that is why God wants you to stop measuring His presence by what you can currently see. Because if you're honest, there have been days when you wondered where He was. Days when the pressure felt overwhelming. Days when the financial burden seemed heavier than your faith. Days when you prayed for help and heard nothing but silence. In those moments, it is easy to assume that God is distant, easy to believe that He has forgotten your situation, easy to think that maybe your prayers are somehow getting lost in the darkness. But nothing could be further from the truth. God has been with you through every difficult moment of this journey. He was there when you worried about how you would make it through another month. He was there when you sat alone trying to figure out a solution. He was there when anxiety stole your sleep and left your mind racing with questions. He was there during every setback, every disappointment, every moment of uncertainty. And not once did He look away. Not once did He stop caring. Not once did He lose sight of the plans He has for your life. The silence was not abandonment. The waiting was not punishment. And the delay was not proof that God had stopped working. In fact, some of God's greatest work happens in seasons when nothing seems to be happening at all. While you have been focused on what hasn't changed, God has been working in places you cannot see. He has been arranging details, opening paths, preparing opportunities, positioning people, creating connections, working behind doors that have not opened yet. And here's what changes everything. God is not worried about your future. The one who sees tomorrow more clearly than you see today is already there. He already knows the breakthrough that is coming. He already sees the answer that has not yet appeared. He already knows how this chapter will lead into the next one. So tonight, instead of focusing on what you lack, focus on who walks beside you, because God's presence is greater than your pressure. His power is greater than your limitations, and His plans are greater than the obstacles standing in front of you. The breakthrough may not have arrived yet, but God is already present in the process of bringing it to pass. And there is a reason the resistance has felt so strong lately. Because whenever breakthrough draws near, a battle often begins beneath the surface. The struggle you've been facing is about more than money, more than overdue bills, more than delayed opportunities, more than feeling stuck in the same place year after year. There is another battle taking place, a battle most people around you cannot see, a battle for your hope. Because when breakthrough takes longer than expected, discouragement begins to speak. It whispers that nothing will ever change. It tells you that your efforts don't matter. It tries to convince you that your future will look exactly like your present. And if you listen to that voice long enough, you begin to expect disappointment before it even arrives. You stop dreaming. You stop believing. You stop looking forward to tomorrow. Not because you want to, but because protecting yourself from disappointment feels safer than hoping again. That is how stagnation traps people, not just in their circumstances, but in their expectations. Little by little, fear lowers the ceiling of what they believe is possible. Fear says, don't expect too much. Fear says you've tried before. Fear says, nothing ever works out for you. And after hearing those messages enough times, they start sounding like the truth. But they are not the truth. They are only the echoes of past disappointments trying to shape your future. God never intended for your past struggles to become the blueprint for your future life. The setbacks you've experienced are chapters. They are not the entire story. Yet the enemy would love for you to believe otherwise, because if he can convince you to stop expecting breakthrough, he can keep you from recognizing it when it arrives. Think about that. How many opportunities have people missed because they stopped believing anything good could happen? How many blessings went unnoticed because discouragement blinded them to possibility? That is why this battle matters so much. It's not just about finances. It's not just about circumstances. It's about keeping your heart open to what God is preparing. Because the closer a breakthrough gets, the louder doubt often becomes. The closer a door is to opening, the more fear tries to convince you to walk away. And maybe that's exactly why the pressure has felt so intense lately. Maybe the resistance is not evidence that God is absent. Maybe it's evidence that something is shifting. Because while fear has been trying to lower your expectations, God has been preparing to raise them. And what He wants to restore next is something far more valuable than money. He wants to restore the way you see yourself and the future He has placed before you. And this is the moment where your perspective begins to change. Not because every problem has suddenly disappeared. Not because your bank account looks different overnight. Not because every answer has arrived. But because you are starting to realize that this season may not be what you thought it was. For so long, you viewed this chapter as a season of delay, a season of lack, a season of waiting. But what if God has been using it as a season of preparation? What if the struggle has been building something inside you that success alone could never produce? Strength, wisdom, patience, resilience, the valor that will sustain the blessing when it arrives. Because breakthrough is not only about receiving something new, it's also about becoming the person who is ready to carry it, and that changes everything. Suddenly, the waiting has purpose. The lessons have purpose. Even the difficult moments have purpose. Nothing has been wasted. Not the tears, not the setbacks, not the nights you wondered how you would make it through. God has been using every part of this journey. And here's what you've been missing. Breakthrough rarely begins the day you see it. It usually begins long before that. It begins in unseen places, in quiet moments, in small shifts, in conversations you don't yet know are important, in opportunities that are slowly moving toward you. While you've been looking for one dramatic moment, God has been arranging a series of details behind the scenes, piece by piece, step by step. And now, something inside you is beginning to awaken. Not certainty, not complete understanding, but hope. A renewed belief that your future can be different from your past. A renewed expectation that God is still writing new chapters. A renewed confidence that your current situation is not your final destination. And that hope matters, because hope changes the way you walk. It changes the way you pray. It changes the way you see opportunities. It allows you to recognize doors that fear would have caused you to ignore. So don't mistake this season for the end. Don't assume that because the breakthrough has been delayed, it has been denied. God is still moving, still preparing, still opening paths you cannot yet see. And before He changes your circumstances, He wants to remind you of something powerful. You are far more valuable, capable, and chosen than this difficult season has allowed you to believe. For too long, you've been looking at yourself through the lens of your struggles, through the lens of unpaid bills, delayed opportunities, missed goals, unanswered prayers, and without realizing it, you may have started measuring your worth by what hasn't happened yet. You may have begun to believe that because your progress has been slow, your value is somehow less. Because your breakthrough hasn't arrived, your future must be limited. Because life has felt stagnant, your purpose must be smaller than you once imagined. But God wants to correct that lie tonight. Your circumstances do not define you. Your bank account does not define you. Your setbacks do not define you. And your current season certainly does not define who you are. You are more than the struggle you've been carrying, more than the pressure you've been facing, more than the mistakes you've made, more than the disappointments you've experienced. God sees something in you that fear has been trying to hide. He sees strength where you see exhaustion. He sees perseverance where you see frustration. He sees growth where you see delay. He sees purpose where you see confusion. Think about everything you've survived, the challenges that should have broken you, the seasons that should have defeated you, the moments when you felt like giving up, but somehow found the strength to keep moving forward. That wasn't weakness, that was resilience. That was proof that God has been sustaining you all along. You may not feel strong every day. You may not always feel confident. But your survival through this season is evidence that there is more inside you than you realize. And there is a reason God has kept you moving forward, because your story is not ending in this place. The struggle was never meant to become your identity. The waiting was never meant to become your identity. The lack was never meant to become your identity. You are not defined by what you have lost. You are defined by the God who continues to guide your life. You are chosen, you are seen, you are valued, you are loved, and you still have purpose ahead of you. In fact, the very things you've endured, Fayette, may become the foundation for the breakthrough that is now beginning. Because God doesn't simply bring people out of difficult seasons. He transforms them through those seasons. And as you begin to see yourself the way God sees you, something remarkable starts to happen. Your expectations rise, your faith grows stronger, your vision expands, and suddenly the future no longer looks impossible. It looks promising, because the breakthrough that begins tonight is not only about changing your circumstances, it's about stepping into a future filled with new possibilities, restored hope, and opportunities you never thought possible. Now, take a moment and imagine your life 6 months from now. Imagine looking back on this season and realizing that the chapter you thought would never end was actually the beginning of something new. The breakthrough may not arrive all at once. It may begin with a single opportunity, a conversation, a connection, an open door, a solution you never saw coming. That's often how God works, not always through dramatic moments, but through unexpected steps that slowly transform everything. The financial pressure that once controlled your thoughts begins to lose its power. The fear that kept you awake at night begins to fade. The hopelessness that followed you for so long starts to give way to peace. And little by little, you begin to see evidence that God was working all along. What once felt impossible starts becoming possible. What once felt delayed starts moving forward. What once felt closed begins to open. So don't give up now. Don't stop believing now. You're closer than you think. The season of stagnation is ending, and the breakthrough God has been preparing is already beginning to unfold. So tonight, lay down your worries and release the burden you've been carrying. Trust that God is already working in ways you cannot yet see. May He fill your heart with peace, your mind with hope, and your spirit with renewed strength. May every fear be replaced with faith. May every delay give way to purpose. And may you walk forward knowing that your breakthrough is no longer just a prayer. It's a season that is beginning. God is with you, and your best chapter is still ahead.